My name is Khalil, 35, a financial planner who thought family was my rock, until my brother Rami stood at our Thanksgiving table, his venomous smile declaring me an outcast, sparking a betrayal so raw, I unleashed a truth that shattered their lies and left them reeling in a storm I ignited. My job revolves around crunching numbers, helping clients manage their money. But outside of work, I'm usually alone, listening to music or reading books to escape the noise of the world. I'm not the type who enjoys parties or standing out in a crowd. I value peace, punctuality, and perhaps because of that, my family always sees me as the reliable one. I'm used to standing in the background, helping without asking for anything in return, from paying rent for my parents to lending money to my younger brother Rami, even though he's never paid me back. I used to believe that family was everything, the one place I could rely on, no matter how the world crumbled. But that Thanksgiving changed everything. Thanksgiving was always a time for family to gather, but for me, it felt like a performance I was forced to play. This year, I braced myself for the usual questions. Khalil, when are you getting married? How much do you earn to still live alone like that? Or worse, the thinly veiled requests for money. But I never expected the dinner would shatter everything I once called family. I whispered to myself, just get through it, Khalil. They'll never see you. The dining table was packed. My parents sat at the head, their hair a little grayer than last year. Next to them were my aunt and uncle, a few cousins, and Lena, Rami's wife, feeding their young son. Rami, my younger brother, sat across from me, his smile as radiant as a spotlight. He always knew how to make people love him, even without trying. I, on the other hand, was the quiet one, the one the family only remembered when they needed something. Khalil, pass the mashed potatoes, my mother said, her voice gentle but with a hint of awkwardness. I slid the dish over, feeling more like a waiter than a son. Why do I always feel invisible? I muttered under my breath, my heart heavy. The meal passed with the same recycled stories. My uncle talked about his new job, my aunt bragged about her grandson, and Rami rambled on about his vague business plans, which everyone nodded along to approvingly. I just listened, nodded, and tried not to let my exhaustion show. Then, like a bolt of lightning in a clear sky, Rami stood up abruptly. The sound of his chair scraping against the wooden floor made everyone jump. He held his wine glass, his eyes gleaming, but not with the usual cheer. There was something cold, almost malicious in his gaze. My heart raced, a bad feeling creeping in. I whispered to myself, "What are you planning, Rami? This isn't right." "Ladies and gentlemen," Rami began, his voice booming as if he were giving a speech, a cruel edge to his tone. "Today is Thanksgiving, a time for honesty. I have something to share about family, about Khalil." All eyes turned to me. I froze, my hand tightening around my fork, struggling to stay calm. Rami looked at me, his smile twisted. "We've talked. The whole family has discussed it thoroughly, and we've agreed." He paused, as if savoring the moment. "Khalil, you're no longer part of this family." "What the hell, Rami?" I snapped, my voice low but trembling with shock. He laughed, cold and sharp. "You heard me, Khalil. You're done here." The air seemed to solidify. Somewhere Lena gasped, but no one spoke. My parents lowered their heads, their eyes glued to their plates. My aunt and uncle exchanged awkward glances, but didn't object. My cousins stayed silent, a few nodding slightly, as if they'd known this was coming. Lena clutched her son tightly, her eyes wide with confusion. I felt the blood in my veins stop flowing. An invisible blade had just sliced through my chest, the pain so intense it stole my breath. "What?" My own voice reached my ears as if it came from somewhere else. "Rami, what did you just say?" "You're lying," I shouted, my fork clattering to the table. "How dare you say that?" Rami shrugged, as if he were talking about the weather. "You heard me. You don't belong here. You always mess things up, always think you're better than us. We took a vote, Khalil. The family agreed." "The family?" I repeated, my eyes scanning each person at the table. My mother bit her lip, fidgeting with her napkin. My father stared out the window, as if trying to escape the moment. No one spoke up for me, no one. Lena whispered something to Rami, but he brushed her off, still wearing that smug smile. "Mom, Dad, say something," I pleaded, my voice cracking. My mother's eyes filled with tears, but she stayed silent. My father muttered, Khalil, don't make a scene. I wanted to scream, to slam the table, to demand why. What had I done? Me, the one who was always there when they needed me, the one who paid rent when my parents were struggling, the one who lent Rami money time and again, knowing he'd never repay me. But I didn't scream. I didn't slam the table. I just sat there, feeling like the world had collapsed and I was the only one who noticed. Then I smiled, a small, icy smile that I didn't know I had the strength to muster. "Is that so, Rami?" I said, my voice steady, laced with a dangerous calm. "The family decided." "Huh," I whispered to myself. "You've crossed a line, Rami. You'll regret this." Rami nodded smugly. "That's right. You should leave, Khalil. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." "Harder?" I laughed, a bitter edge to my voice. "You've just destroyed everything. Let's see how you handle the truth." I didn't respond. Instead, I reached for the briefcase beside my chair, the one I'd brought with me that no one had noticed. I placed it on the table, the soft click echoing in the deadly silence. Everyone looked at me, a mix of curiosity and unease in their eyes. Remy frowned, but maintained his confident demeanor. "Before I go," I said slowly, my voice a low growl, "I have something for everyone to see. Rami, open it. Consider it a parting gift." I slid the briefcase toward him. Rami hesitated, his eyes flicking to me, then to the others, as if seeking support, but no one said anything. Lena watched him, her gaze sharp as a blade. Finally, Rami opened the briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of documents, bound in black with no label. He flipped to the first page and I saw it. The moment his face shifted from confidence to panic, his eyes widened, his hands trembled, and the papers nearly slipped from his grasp. "What is this?" Rami stammered, his voice breaking. "Khalil, where did you get this?" "What's wrong, Rami?" I taunted, leaning forward. "Scared of your own secrets?" I tilted my head, still smiling. "Keep going, Rami. Read it out loud. Let the family hear. I think they'll be surprised." Lena reached over, snatching the documents from Rami's hands. She flipped through them quickly, her eyes scanning the lines, the photos, the receipts. Her face paled, then flushed red. "Rami!" she screamed, her voice shattering, a raw edge of betrayal. "Who is Aisha? These places, hotels, restaurants. What have you been doing? Answer her, Rami!" I demanded, my voice rising to a fierce crescendo. "Tell your wife what you did with my money." Lena's scream tore through the silence. My parents looked up, bewildered. My aunt and uncle started whispering. Rami staggered back, gripping his chair as if he might collapse. No. Lena, let me explain. It's not what you think." "Explain?" Lena shrieked, throwing the papers at him. "You cheated on me, Rami, with Khalil's money?" But I knew, and Lena knew, that no explanation would suffice. Those documents were the blade I had sharpened, and now they were cutting through Rami's facade. I sat there, watching him squirm, watching the family begin to realize how wrong they had been. But in my heart, there was no triumph, only pain and a faint sense of relief, because at last the truth was laid bare. I whispered to myself, "You thought you could erase me, Rami. Now you're the one exposed." Lena's scream still echoed in my head, but I didn't look at her. Didn't look at Rami. Didn't look at anyone. My eyes were fixed on the plate in front of me where the slice of turkey had gone cold. The entire family was silent, save for the sound of hurried breathing and the rustle of paper as Lena flipped through the pages of the documents. I knew they were waiting for me to say something, waiting for me to explode or at least explain, but I wasn't in a rush. I wanted them to feel, even for a moment, the betrayal I had endured for years. I whispered to myself, "Let them drown in their guilt. They earned it." "Khalil," my mother spoke, her voice trembling. "What is this? What are you doing?" I looked up, meeting her eyes directly. For the first time in my life, I didn't see her as someone I needed to protect. I saw someone who had chosen to stand on the wrong side. "You want to know, Mom?" I said, my voice eerily calm, but with a sharp edge. "Let me tell you, not just about today, but about everything that led to this moment." I took a deep breath, as if gathering strength from old wounds. From the time I was a kid, I was the obedient child in this family. I did everything you and Dad asked, from cleaning the house to looking after Ramy when he was little. I didn't complain because I thought it was my duty. But as I grew up, I realized something. This family didn't value me for being Khalil. You only needed me because I was always ready to help. You used me, I added, my voice rising, raw with years of suppressed pain. And you let him poison you against me. My father frowned, about to say something, but I raised my hand to stop him. Dad, let me finish. Do you remember when I was 20, working extra shifts to save for a car? You called me selfish for not sharing my paycheck with the family, but Ramy, 18 at the time, asked for money for new sneakers and you and Mom gave it to him without a single question. I didn't hold a grudge, but I remembered. Why was I never enough? I demanded, my eyes burning into his. He looked away, muttering, "It wasn't like that, Khalil." I turned to Ramy, who was now staring down, his hands gripping the edge of the table tightly. "And you, Ramy, you've always been the star. You're charming. You know how to make people laugh, make them love you, but you also know how to take advantage. When I helped you with your homework, you said thank you, but then you told your friends I was your nerdy brother. When I drove you to hang out with your friends, you said I was great, but behind my back you called me stingy because I didn't buy everything you wanted." Lena looked at Ramy, her eyes sharp as knives. "Is that true, Ramy? You said those things about your brother?" "Tell her, Ramy!" I snapped, my voice a whip. "Tell her how you mocked me while I bled for this family." Ramy stammered. No, I was just joking. I didn't mean it, Khalil, you know that." "Joking?" I let out a dry laugh, the harsh sound cutting through the room. "Joking is when you took my money to buy gifts for your girlfriend while your wife was at home taking care of your son. Joking is when this whole family sat here agreeing to cast me out just because you said I didn't belong." "You're a liar, Ramy," I roared, my voice shaking the room, "and you dragged them all into your lies." I turned to the rest of the table, my gaze lingering on each person. "Aunt, uncle, cousins, every one of you knows what I've done for this family. When Mom was sick, I paid the hospital bills. When Dad lost his job, I covered the rent. When Aunt and Uncle needed a loan to open their shop, I co-signed for them. I never kept score, but I thought at the very least you'd respect me. Instead, I was the easy target. I was the one this family could turn its back on just because Ramy said a few words. "You betrayed me," I said, my voice breaking, tears burning my eyes. "All of you chose him over me." No one dared meet my eyes. My mother wiped away tears, but I wasn't sure if she was crying out of regret or shame. My father rubbed his hands together, muttering something about a misunderstanding. But I didn't stop. I needed them to hear everything, to understand why I had brought those documents here. "I don't blame you for loving Ramy," I continued, my voice softening, almost as if I were speaking to myself. "But I blame you for never asking how I felt. No one ever asked why I live alone, why I never talk about friends or dreams. You all saw me as a machine, always ready to give money, always ready to fix other people's mistakes. And today, when Ramy said I was no longer family, you all agreed. No one asked me. No one. I whispered to myself, 'You broke my heart and you didn't even care.'" Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence, as if the entire room were holding its breath. Lena clutched her son tighter, her eyes red and brimming with tears. Ramy kept his head down, but I saw his shoulders trembling. Maybe it was fear, maybe it was regret, but I didn't care anymore. I stood up, walked over to Ramy and placed a hand on his shoulder. He flinched, looking up at me with panicked eyes. "Now, Ramy," I said, my voice soft but cold, a quiet menace in every word. "Tell the family about the loans. Tell them what you did with my money." Ramy shook his head, his voice feeble. "Khalil, don't. You don't have to do this. We're brothers. We can talk privately, can't we? Privately?" I gave a faint, bitter smile, my voice dripping with contempt. "Like how you privately told the whole family I didn't belong? No, Ramy, speak, or I will." Lena cut in, her voice sharp as a blade. "Ramy, talk. What money? How much did you borrow from Khalil?" "Speak, Ramy," Lena screamed, her voice raw with betrayal, "or I'll read it myself." Ramy swallowed hard, his eyes darting around like a trapped animal. Finally, he mumbled, Just a few times. I needed money, so I asked Khalil. It's no big deal. A few times? I repeated, my voice dripping with sarcasm, my eyes boring into his. I reached for the documents in Lena's hands, flipping to a page filled with numbers. Let me help you remember. The first time, April last year, you asked for $600, 0 cents. You said it was for car repairs. I gave it to you because I thought you needed it. In June, you asked for $1,200, 0 cents to pay off your credit card. I gave it to you. Then in September, $2,500, 0 cents for temporary difficulties. I still gave it to you even though I was starting to have doubts. I paused, looking at Rami. He shrank back as if he wanted to disappear. In total, Rami, you borrowed $15,000, 0 cents from me over 2 years. Not a single cent repaid. You stole from me, Rami, I said, my voice a low, accusing growl, and you used it to betray your family. When I asked what you used the money for, you said personal expenses. I trusted you because you're my brother, but you know I'm not stupid. I started digging. Lena stood up abruptly, her voice trembling, her face a mask of fury. $15,000, 0 cents? Rami, what did you do with that money? We weren't that desperate. Rami opened his mouth, but no words came out. I continued, my voice steady like I was reading a verdict, each word a hammer struck. I hoped you used that money for your family, for Lena, for your son, but no. You used it to buy gifts for Aisha, to take her to 5-star hotels, to rent fancy cars, buy flowers, and dine at restaurants Lena has never even been to. I whispered to myself, You're finished, Rami. The truth is your ruin. Lena covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Aisha? Who is she, Rami? Tell me. Rami shook his head, his voice nearly breaking into a sob. Lena, I'm sorry. It's not what you think. I was just trying to help her. Help? I cut in, tossing the documents onto the table, my voice rising to a thunderous roar that shook the room. Help by lying to your wife? By taking my money to keep her? Rami, you didn't just betray Lena. You betrayed me and this entire family. You're a coward, Rami, I shouted, my voice raw with years of pent-up rage. You used me, mocked me, and now you've lost everything. I turned to Lena, my voice softening, though still heavy with pain. Lena, you deserve to know the truth. I didn't want to hurt you, but you need to know. Rami didn't just borrow money. He texted his friends, calling me stingy when I refused to give him more. He mocked me, said I was foolish for always helping the family. It's all in there. I pointed to the documents, now lying open on the table, exposing the messages, receipts, and the ugly truth. I'm sorry, Lena, I said, my voice breaking. You didn't deserve this. She looked at me, tears streaming, and whispered, Thank you, Khalil. You saved me. Lena collapsed into her chair, clutching her son, sobbing silently. My mother broke down in tears, but this time I felt no sympathy. My father stood up, about to say something, but I raised my hand. Enough, I said firmly, my voice a final, unshakable command. I don't need to hear any more excuses. I just want you all to see clearly. I'm not the one tearing this family apart. I'm the only one who's been trying to hold it together, and I'm tired. I walked out of that house without looking back. The sounds of Lena and Rami arguing, my mother's sobs, my father's meaningless murmurs all faded behind the slammed door. The cold November wind stung my face, but I didn't feel it. Inside me, a fire had just gone out, leaving ashes and a strange emptiness. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't stay, not tonight, maybe never. I whispered to myself, You're free, Khalil. They can't hurt you anymore. In the days that followed, I didn't turn on my phone. I locked myself in my small apartment with a computer screen and a cold cup of coffee as my only company. I didn't want to hear explanations. Didn't want to see apology texts or pleas, but I knew no matter how much I tried to hide, the truth in those documents was like a bomb, and I didn't need to be there to see it blow everything apart. I whispered to myself, Let them burn in the mess they made. I'm done carrying their weight. A week later, I received the first message. It wasn't from Rami or my parents, it was from Lena. Her message was brief, just a few lines. Khalil, thank you. I filed for divorce. I'm sorry I didn't see the truth sooner. I whispered to myself, "You're stronger than they know, Lena. You'll rise." I read it over and over, a mix of relief and sorrow swirling inside me. Lena didn't deserve this. She was a good person, always trying to keep her small family intact. But Rami, with his selfishness, had destroyed it all. I didn't reply right away. I didn't know what to say. Instead, I opened my laptop and checked my bank account, a habit I'd abandoned since that fateful dinner. No surprise there. Not a single repayment from Rami, not a word about the $15,000, 0 cents. I gave a bitter smile, wondering why I'd ever hoped he'd change. I whispered to myself, "You're a fool, Rami. You lost everything for nothing." A few days later, news started trickling in, though I didn't want to hear it. A mutual friend told me Lena had moved out, taking her son with her. She rented a small apartment and started working extra hours to support them both. Rami, meanwhile, tried to cling to her. He showed up at her place, begging on his knees, claiming Aisha was just a mistake and that he loved her and their son, but Lena wouldn't listen. She had seen the receipts, the messages, the photos in my documents. She knew Rami hadn't just betrayed her. He'd mocked her sacrifices behind her back. There was no going back. I whispered to myself, "Good for you, Lena. You're breaking free." Rami, having lost his wife and son, began to unravel. Friends said he was drinking more, showing up at bars with a gaunt face, muttering about how everything was ruined. He stopped going to work regularly, and his already shaky sales job quickly fell apart. I wasn't surprised. Rami had always thrived on people's affection, on his smile and empty promises. When the mask fell, he had nothing left to hold on to. I whispered to myself, "You built your life on lies, Rami. Now you're paying the price." My parents were the next to try reaching out. One morning, I saw 12 missed calls from my mother and a long text message. She wrote that she was so sorry for what happened, that she didn't know Rami had done those things. She said the family was struggling, that they needed me, that blood ties can't be broken. I read the message, my finger hovering over the screen, but I didn't respond. My mother's apology wasn't genuine. She wasn't sorry for turning her back on me, for believing Rami without asking me a single question. She was only sorry because now, with Rami no longer the golden son, they needed me again, needed my money, my help. My father called too, but he only left a short voicemail. "Khalil, you okay? Call me back." Not a word of apology, not a hint of acknowledgement. I deleted the voicemail, feeling as if I'd just cut an invisible thread. I used to think my father understood me, even though he was a man of few words. But at that dinner table, he had stayed silent. And that silence said everything. I whispered to myself, "You chose him, Dad. You lost me." My aunt, uncle, cousins, none of them reached out. Maybe they were ashamed, maybe they didn't know what to say, or maybe, as I'd always suspected, they never truly saw me as family. I didn't dig for answers. I didn't need them. Rami finally texted me. A long message sent at 3 o'clock in the morning, riddled with typos and desperation. He called me a traitor, said I'd ruined his life, that if I hadn't brought out those documents, things would have been different. He wrote, "You're my brother, Khalil. How could you do this to me? Do you want me to die?" I whispered to myself, "You're pathetic, Rami. You blame me for your own sins." I read the message, each word like a knife, but not because I felt guilty. It hurt because I realized even now Rami couldn't see his own wrongs. He didn't apologize for deceiving me, for exploiting my kindness. He only blamed me for daring to tell the truth. I didn't reply. I deleted the message, turned off my phone, and sat in the dark. For the first time, I wondered if I'd gone too far. Should I have stayed silent, let Rami keep living his lies? But then I remembered his eyes at the dinner table, that smug smile as he declared I was no longer family. I remembered the times he asked for money, his empty promises, the texts mocking me to his friends. No, I didn't regret it. I was just tired. In the weeks that followed, I heard Rami had moved back in with my parents. He had no money left, no stable job, and Aisha, the woman he'd spent thousands to impress, vanished the moment he had nothing left to offer. My parents, despite their struggles, took him in, as they always had. They called it family, but I saw it as enabling. They never held Rami accountable, and now they were paying the price. I whispered to myself, "You're enabling a liar, Mom, you'll never learn." Lena, on the other hand, began rebuilding her life. She found a stable job, enrolled her son in preschool, and even started talking to me again. Once she invited me for coffee, just to say thank you. "Khalil," she said, her eyes brighter than the last time I saw her. "If it weren't for you, I'd still be living in his lies. I owe you." "You owe me nothing, Lena," I said, my voice soft but firm. "You're strong enough to stand on your own." She smiled, tears in her eyes. "You gave me that strength, Khalil. Thank you." I just smiled, telling her she didn't owe me anything. But deep down, I knew helping Lena see the truth was the one right thing I'd done in this whole mess. My family, or what was left of it, continued to fall apart. My parents called a few more times, mentioning rent, bills, as if I was still the one who'd fix everything. I didn't answer. I was no longer the machine they could switch on whenever they needed. I'd said no, and this time I meant it. I whispered to myself, "I'm not your ATM anymore. Find someone else to use." That night, I stood by the window, looking down at the empty street. I thought about Rami, his desperate eyes in that text. I thought about my mother, her insincere tears. I thought about my father, his silence. And I wondered if they'd ever understand what they'd lost. Not me, not my money, but the chance to be a real family. But then I shook my head and closed the window. That wasn't my question anymore. I'd left them behind, and though it hurt, I knew I had to move forward. I whispered to myself, "You're enough, Khalil. You don't need them." I left the city on a gray day, my suitcase packed tightly in the back of the car, just enough for a fresh start. The old apartment, with its walls marked by countless nights spent thinking about family, was now just a memory. I didn't look back. Didn't want to see the road that once led me to my mother's house, my father's, Rami's. I drove, the radio playing an old song, and for the first time in years, I sang along, even if off-key. I whispered to myself, "This is my new beginning, no looking back." The new city was 5 hours away from the old one. I rented a small apartment with a window overlooking a park where children played every afternoon. I bought a cheap wooden table, a blue sofa, and painted the walls myself. Those small tasks lightened my heart, as if I were building a home for myself, not for anyone else. The new job was a turning point. I worked as a project manager for a startup where people called me by my name, not Rami's brother or the healthful guy. My colleagues invited me for beers after work, laughed about minor project mistakes, and for the first time I felt like I belonged somewhere. The pay was better, but what I valued most was the respect. Once my boss patted my shoulder and said, "Khalil, you did great work." "Thank you," I said, my voice thick with emotion, the praise warming a part of me long forgotten. A simple sentence, but it brought a sting to my eyes because I realized it had been so long since I'd heard praise. I stopped checking my phone every hour. I no longer waited for texts from my mother or hoped for an apology from Rami. Lena was the only one I kept in touch with. She texted me, sharing updates about her son, about how she'd just been promoted in her part-time job. The little guy started preschool, she wrote, attaching a photo of him grinning ear to ear holding a ball. I smiled and replied, "He looks like his mom." Lena didn't talk much about Rami, but I knew she was rebuilding her life step by step, just like me. I whispered to myself, "We're survivors, Lena. We'll keep going." I started volunteering at a community center. I didn't have grand plans, just wanted to do something outside of work. But there, I found joy. I taught kids to paint, helped fix bicycles, or simply sat and listened to an old man tell war stories. They didn't know my past, didn't know about the family that turned its back on me. They just knew me as Khalil, the guy who always brought coffee and was ready to help. Once a little girl gave me a scribbled drawing and said, "You're the best, Uncle." "Thank you, kiddo," I said, my voice catching her words a balm to old wounds. I kept that drawing, taped it to my fridge, a reminder that I could still create something good. I also reconnected with a few old friends. One evening, I met Nabil, a college buddy, at a small diner. He asked, "You okay after the family stuff?" I took a sip of beer, thinking for a moment. "I'm okay," I said, my voice steady. "I lost a lot, but I found something more important." "You found yourself," Nabil said, his eyes warm. I nodded, smiling. Exactly. Nabil nodded, not pressing further, and I knew he understood. Friends like Nabil, moments like that helped me realize I wasn't as alone as I'd once thought. The new life wasn't always easy. Some days I missed my mother, the smell of her Christmas cookies. Some nights I thought about Rami, wondering what he was doing, whether he felt regret. But then I'd turn on the light, brew coffee, and reminded myself that I'd chosen this path. I was no longer the one chasing after family, no longer the one sacrificing to keep the peace. I was Khalil, and I was living for myself. I whispered to myself, "You're building a life worth living, Khalil. Keep going." One day, Lena sent me an envelope. Inside was a handwritten card, her letters slanting gracefully. "Khalil," she wrote, "thank you for giving me the courage to start over. You're strong, and I hope you know that." I whispered to myself, "I'm trying, Lena, for both of us." I read it again and again, a warmth spreading in my chest. I folded the card and tucked it into a drawer alongside a few small keepsakes. An old photo of me and Lena, a badge from the volunteer group, and a scrap of paper I'd written to myself. "You are enough." Lena's card was proof that I'd done the right thing, not just for me, but for her. One Saturday evening, I sat on the sofa, a cold cup of coffee on the table. Outside, rain pattered softly, the gentle sound pulling me into thought. I thought about family, not with the pain I used to feel, but with a strange curiosity. Had I been too harsh in cutting them off completely? Should I call my mother just to hear her voice? Could I forgive Rami if only to lighten my own heart? I stood up, opened the drawer, and took out the old photo. It was from a summer vacation when I was 20. Rami, 18. He stood next to me on the beach, grinning brightly, his arm around a volleyball. My mother stood behind us, hugging us both, her eyes glowing with pride. I stared at the photo, trying to recall how it felt back then, when we were still a family, when I didn't yet know about the lies, the times I'd been used. But then I remembered Thanksgiving dinner. I remembered Rami standing up, declaring I was no longer family. I remembered my mother's downcast eyes, my father's silence, and how no one stood up for me. The good memories didn't vanish, but they couldn't erase the truth. They had chosen Rami, chosen the easy path, and I had paid the price for it. I whispered to myself, "You don't owe them forgiveness, Khalil. You owe yourself peace." I put the photo away, closed the drawer. The question lingered. Had I been too rigid? Maybe I'd shut the door too quickly, leaving no room for reconciliation. But then I thought of Lena, how she rose after being betrayed. I thought of myself, the days I woke up without guilt, without the pressure to fix everything. I'd said no to my family, and in that no I found myself. But as I stood there, a quiet ache lingered, not for their love, but for the man I'd been, used and unseen. I'd built a new life, but the scars of their betrayal would always whisper, a reminder that even freedom carries a cost. I stepped outside, grabbed an umbrella, and walked in the rain. The droplets slid down my face, cool and clear. I no longer needed answers to my questions, whether to forgive, whether to reach out again. Those were my choices, and I'd make them when I was ready, if I ever wanted to. For now, I just needed to live for Khalil, for the days I woke up with a smile, for the people who called my name with sincerity. I stood in the rain, tilting my face to the sky. For the first time, I felt enough. Enough to let go. Enough to begin. Enough to be myself.